Today, I want to talk about something that is in sort of rather hidden. And I also think that this is a missing link for spiritual realization and awakening. I call this path to awakening. And the path to awakening is empathy. And empathy, not in a way that you are absorbing somebody else's energy. That's how many people use empathy, rather in a negative connotation. But empathy to me is the capacity to be able to feel the world. So most of the thing that I talk about is to really helping people understand the nature of who we are. And in who we are at the essential level, spiritual being is not in the dimension of the concept or the mental construct. So let's say if I am here right now, speaking in front of the camera and having the audience, that is a concept of the self as a speaker. Yeah. My name is part of the concept of myself. The role that I'm playing is the concept of myself. And each and every one of us has concept that we play in this world. That is a self, the dimension of the self. That is the image in the mind. And that is not who we are, but we need that concept in order to express in this physical world and experience in this physical world. You cannot experience and express yourself without the concept in the mind. Now, that is the reason that many people who are on the spiritual path struggle staying in that spiritual dimension because inevitably they need to have the ego, the concept, the self in the mind to relate to the physical world. So the whole journey of my spiritual path has been understanding the dynamic of the self and understanding the dynamic of the essence, the relationship between the two, between essence and personality, the self and the soul. And what is it that is preventing us from staying in that expansive state? Because when you are in when you are in the path of spirituality, you are on the path because something feels missing and you are missing that sense of wholeness, the connectedness. And it's an inevitable path that we are all walking, that the more you focus on the physical world, the more you focus on accomplishing something, the more you are immersed in the experience of doing and having, you are inevitably creating this sort of reinforcing the idea of individuality and differentiation that often often sort of lands as something completely opposite of the connectedness and wholeness. So for me, the entire path has been trying to make sense, right? Trying to make sense following this sort of instinctive knowing of we all are one and we want to begin creating the life of our desire to have fun and joy and to fulfill what we are called to do and to integrate it all. Yeah. And I think the missing link is in this sort of function and the mechanism of how we develop and build identity. So the sense of self, who we think we are, who we feel we are in this world, is always formed in relationship. So you cannot exist without the existence and the presence of others. And this is sort of like a rather odd, right? Um, Let me tell you where I got this from, right? I think the idea that I received this from is by Daniel Siegel's concept of interpersonal neurobiology. So, when I was in graduate school, I was exposed to different neuroscience and all that. And Daniel Siegel, he actually, I think he's a Harvard dropout who a psychiatrist who began focusing on the mindfulness, and he's the person who coined the term interpersonal neurobiology, which means that your neurobiology, that brain and your biology is being formed and shaped through the empathy, the interpersonal relationship, the sense of self. So, and then if you go deeper into this conversation, what really means is that the identity, personality, and the sense of self is being formed through the relationship that you have with your past. So you become you feel that, you know, the relatedness with the past and also the relatedness with the outside. And because the nature of the ego is to be attached to something to keep surviving, that gets in the way. And it's interesting because when we are expressing in this world and creating different experiencing and experiences and relating with people, you are constantly redefining yourself, who you are. So you cannot not be anybody when you're living in this physical world. That's why many people try to sort of uh, isolate themselves from this information and noise from the world to be able to find the center. But then when we come back to this physical world, because the noise and the information you are consuming, and then the moment you're consuming the information from the outside world, you are actually creating an identity based on that relationship constantly. So you cannot escape from that, right? So then the more smart way to spiritually awaken is to begin understanding that we are here to begin actually forming that identity, and then we can choose that identity to be in alignment with the quality and the nature of the essence. So the nature and the quality of the essence is love, expansion, freedom, joyful, right? So you because the dimension of the soul and the essence is in the dimension of the absolute, so there's no negativity or contrast. So everything that we want to feel based on the having and doing is the quality of the soul. So begin choosing the perspective and forming an identity that allows us to feel expansive is what we want to practice. And then using the actual, you know, challenges and physical relationship and consequence to be able to practice the perspective that we choose to always come from the place of love, the expansiveness, right? The question that you could ask is, what is the God view? What would be the God essence view of this particular consequence? Because you become inevitably how you're seeing the consequence from. Let me say this again because this is important, right? The view through which you no, the view from which you see the world becomes your identity. The moment you're aware of, you know, where you're seeing this from, which means the perspective and the meaning that you're making based on where you're viewing things from, the view from which you see the world becomes your definition, self-definition. So then, when we really understand this, that is when healing the past trauma becomes problematic. Because if you try to heal the past trauma, you're seeing yourself not from the essence view, but from the assumption that you are wounded or you need some healing. Then the healing takes a long time because you can change who you are by changing how you see yourself. But if you are seeing yourself as somebody who is wounded, who you are demonstrating takes time to change because you are actually self-defining yourself by choosing where you're viewing yourself from. I want to pause a little bit because this can make people puzzle, right? You don't need to change who you are, but you only need to change how you see yourself by developing the essence view. And in this interactive world that you're constantly, you know, receiving the information to create an experience and expression, and the external world is defining you. If you are not consciously choosing your viewpoint, you get absorbed by the context for the identity to be created. So what we want to do is to become aware of that, and then to notice that above any of those relationality, even the interpersonal neurobiology that happens, you can become aware of your awareness to choose the person that you want to be by choosing the lens from which you want to see yourself and the world. So the key of this conversation is that you have a choice to choose the lens from which you see yourself and the world. And when you practice that, everything else is an extension of that, and everything is going to be changing. So empathy is an ability to relate to the world, to feel the world. And that is understanding that is the path to awakening, because understanding that we begin choosing the lens from which we see through ourselves and the world. And that is the key ingredients to awaken and transforming. So thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video.